If you are building a world for your tabletop role-playing game, it has to do more than just sit there. Today we're going to be talking about how to have your world be reactive to the players and the choices that they are making. This will be the final video in the collaborative storytelling series. Let's get to it.
Welcome to Dungeon Brew.
Welcome back everyone to Dungeon Brew. Today we are continuing our series on collaborative storytelling and we are talking about world building. This is one of those areas where you can very easily get lost in the weeds. You start mapping out continents, naming rivers, inventing political systems, and 3 hours later you've forgotten that your players just want to steal a goat from a roadside farm. But today we do want to talk about how to develop worlds that work well with your players and the choices that they make. You want to have it actually respond to their choices, and you'll see that this is an area that John and I are both fairly passionate about. We have several series here on Dungeon Brew where we talk about world building and talk about all the different elements that go into it. I'm going to break down some of those for you today and talk about some things you may consider with every aspect of world building. Before we get started, I do want to just give you a rule to follow, which I think is great to keep in the back of your mind anytime that you're engaging in world building. And if you have been following this series for a while, you've heard me talk about good system design in terms of a world that reacts to the choices that your player makes. It makes the game feel alive and it keeps them immersed within that world. So the places that your players visit over time, their actions should matter. If they burn down a forest, it stays burned. If they piss off a baron, his men should be coming and looking for them. If they introduce something new, like a forgotten god or a new magic system or even just an idea, that should ripple outward. And that comes to the rule that we should all be following regarding the world that we're building, and that is Newton's third law. Every action has a reaction, and that's the rule that I like to keep in mind when I'm designing a game. If your players aren't changing the world, then they might as well just be playing a board game. Okay, let's do some rapid-fire world building, starting with geography. It's kind of the obvious choice. Now, I did do a video on this in depth, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, but this includes terrain, weather, natural resources, all the stuff that your players see on the map. And you can use these things to guide choices, to introduce problems, to reflect the consequences of their actions. If they engage with the world in the way that you expect them to, there's going to be consequences for what they do. So if they collapse a mountain pass on an army to stop it, that trade route is gone forever. If they light a forest on fire by fighting a dragon, good luck trying to find ingredients for potions the next time. Maybe they can't find them at all, or maybe the prices in their nearby village have gone up because they have to import them from another settlement on the other side of the desert. I once had a group that accidentally flooded a valley by redirecting a river. It was once a farmland, but then it became a swamp just full of refugees and disease and had monsters that moved into the area. So these simple geography changes can have a massive impact for your game. Culture is next, and I'm talking about values, customs, social cues, all the things that make one place feel different than another. And if your world has different regions, which it should, then people should act differently, depending on where they are. So maybe one city sees necromancy as a sacred art, and another one sees it as blasphemy. That should have some sort of impact on when the players walk into the city with a zombie in tow that they've resurrected from the dead. One trick that I do like to use when it comes to culture is just picking a cultural tension in every one of the major cities that the players may visit. And that could be class-based, religious, racial, economic, whatever it is. Just let the players poke at it, let them pick sides, let them get caught in the middle, and then make things messy in a good way. Next, I want to talk about population, primarily because it's overlooked pretty often, but it is actually a thing that can create tension really quickly within a game. If you have a war that breaks out and people are fleeing, that can have an impact on all the nearby regions. If there's a plague that hits, then your city might thin out, and it can completely change the way that folks are engaging with each other or even with the players when they're in the city. If your players kill the local lord, which we see happen a lot in ttrpgs, who's going to replace him, and how do the people of the town feel about that? One of my groups let a disease kind of ravage this port town because they didn't want to waste their magic in curing it. And that town started to empty out, and the trade collapsed overall, which had an impact not only on that particular city, but also several cities within the regions. And the players had to deal with the fallout a couple of sessions later when the supply line started to dry out and impact all these surrounding towns that were now suffering because of the lack of imports they had coming in. So these kind of consequences can really stick and they kind of have this snowball effect throughout the game in populations, not only in the town they're in, but in populations around the region. Next we have magic and technology, and these ones are huge. And no, you don't need a full magic system in order to think about what you need to do when your players introduce something new in one of these realms to the world. If they go and they uncover an ancient spell that allows you to bring the dead back to life, what does that mean for the world around them? What does it mean for a king who offed his enemy 3 towns over, and now there's this knowledge of how to bring someone back from the dead? And it's not just with magic, it's also with new technology being formulated. If they uncover the secrets or help a dwarf line up the technology to create an airship, what does that mean for the world around them? If you have gunpowder or steam engines or printing presses, if you're introducing any of that, suddenly you may have new factions that are rising up and trying to squash old factions, and a real impact on the society. The bottom line is that your world should be reacting to any of those changes. Don't just let it happen in a vacuum. The next one is near and dear to my heart, religion, which shapes how people see the world, whether we're talking about life, death, fate, magic, morality, all of these things. And if your players are engaging in actions that impact people's views in this particular aspect, there should be, again, a ripple effect. If they're bringing back old gods into the world, or they're killing the avatars of new gods, that should shake entire nations. And even the minor stuff can impact what is happening around them. Let's say that they go to a temple and they preach a different doctrine. There is probably going to be some blowback. Or what happens if they show off divine magic in a crowd that has never seen it before? They may have just started a pilgrimage movement. And the fun part is that half of the world might see it as salvation, and the other half might see it as heresy, and your players are kind of stuck in the middle. How about economy? This one can sneak up on us as game masters because we're not all economists. If your players steal gold from a treasury, that's cool, but what's the impact of it? What if the kingdom was already in debt and now they can't pay their guards, and crime begins to rise and merchants leave the town, and before you know it, that town is going to turn into a slums within a 6-month time period? What happens if the players go out to sea and they break up a blockade, which accidentally tanks an entire nation's grain prices, and then that creates a famine in a neighboring region? How do you have them respond to those types of things? You want to keep track of where money comes from and what happens when that money begins to disappear. And let's end this with talking about politics and warfare. Every single world has some sort of power system, whether that's kings or councils or guilds, and the choices the players make should probably impact any of those entities. Let's say that they went ahead and killed that lord. Did they install a puppet ruler in his place? What happens when the locals realize that? What if they're in a situation where they're trying diplomacy and they fail? Did they just start a war inevitably? I really enjoy playing with politics in my worlds. I like playing with the concept of war within the worlds that I build, but I want the players to feel as though the choices they make absolutely matter. I like to lead them in there where they have to engage in the arguments. They have to try to set the treaties, and if they fail, I like to let the hammer fall. So that is a really brief world building checklist. I didn't want to give you a bunch of fluff, but give you some just direct ideas of things that you might think about in regards to building your world. And if you want to go deeper into this, go back into our series. Look at the earlier videos on morality and environment and contingencies, because all of them connect back into this. I hope that this has been helpful. Please hit that subscribe button, a like, leave me a comment, and go check out our Patreon where we have resources for game masters like you.
Dungeon Brew.